Okay, so welcome to the talk. Is that volume okay for everyone? Yeah. Okay, so welcome to the talk in our current theme. So the current theme, you'll probably remember, is the White Lotus Sutra. So the White Lotus Sutra teaches not so much through concepts and ideas, but much more through stories and myths and symbols. So the White Lotus Sutra, it speaks to our depths, it speaks to our whole being, not just the surface level of thinking and conceptualizing mind. So it speaks to the whole of us, the whole depth of us. Because the Dharma is about transformation, isn't it? But transforming our whole being rather than just what we think. So we do need understanding and we do need reason for a Dharma life. We do need our worldview to be right view. And what I mean by that is we need our worldview to be in line with how things really are. So we need our worldview, our conceptual models to be in line with how things work, with the Buddha's teaching, in line with the Dharma. But also, our emotions really drive us, don't they? So quite often, we do what we want to do. We do what we think we'll enjoy. And we have got this very strong emotional drive, a volitional emotional drive that acts us. So we need our emotions to be moving in the same direction as our higher goals of what we want to attain, what our spiritual aspirations are. We need our emotions to be moving in that same direction. So this is how the stories and the symbols in the White Lotus Sutra, this is how they work. They really engage the emotions and then they transform the emotions in line with reality, in line with how things really are. So that's what the White Lotus Sutra is doing. And the founder of this movement, Sangha says about this, he says, when we are totally integrated, our reason is our emotion, and our emotion is our reason. And then at that point, it's quite difficult for us to say sometimes whether we do things on account of certain reasons or just because we feel like doing them. So when we've reached that point, we have become, as it were, one whole. So that's a totally integrated person. So we're going to try and engage with this. We're going to enter the world of the White Lotus Sutra. And again, Sangha words is that when we enter the world of the White Lotus Sutra, we enter a very mysterious world indeed. We enter a world of transcendental science fiction. So the advice to the approach for the White Lotus Sutra is to just sit back and allow it to have its effect on our mind, on our consciousness. So just to hear it, not to work it out. One thing I'm doing at the moment during this theme is I'm listening to the White Lotus Sutra on audio at night as I fall asleep. And if I wake up in the night, I'm just putting it back on from wherever it was that I think I got to, because I don't really know. I would really recommend doing that. It's mad. It's totally bonkers, but actually it's really having quite an effect on me. You know, I'm very happy at the moment. So this series, this Sangha Night series draws on this book. This is the book by Sangha. So this is called The Drama of Cosmic Enlightenment, Parables, Myths and Symbols from the White Lotus Sutra. So this is his commentary. So when, I am listening to the sutra, but you can't really get a lot of kind of reason out of it. You do need a commentary to kind of make sense of it. So this is in the library and in the bookshop if you're interested. That book is based on Sangha lectures, which were given in 1970 in London, in that kind of hippie culture of London, in the fairly early days of the movement. You can hear those original lectures on Free Buddhist Audio if you're interested, and they're really, really worth listening to. They're very different. So throughout the White Lotus Sutra, the sutra itself exhorts and urges its readers to expound and teach, explain, recite, copy, and pay homage to the sutra itself. So in our own way, we're doing that in the modern West, aren't we? The White Lotus Sutra, in 1970 in London, it was expounded, taught, explained, recited, copied, and paid homage to in those lectures. And now we're doing that in Sheffield on our Sangha Night as well. And according to the sutra, doing that with the White Lotus Sutra creates an incalculable amount of karmic merit. An amount more than the number of the grains of sand in the banks of the river Ganges. So we're fine, we're doing all right, we're doing well. Okay, so let's do it, let's get to the talk. And the talk this evening is a parable from the White Lotus Sutra. And the parable is the parable of the good physician. So it's the climax of the whole of the drama of cosmic enlightenment, this parable. So to set the scene, we have the Buddha as a storyteller on Vulture's Peak, and he is preaching the White Lotus Sutra. He's preaching to a great assembly of monks and nuns, laymen and laywomen, and hosts of non-human beings. So up to this point, as the Buddha has been preaching the sutra, many wondrous things have happened. We've had giant flowers raining down from the heavens. We've had the universe shaking and trembling in 6 different ways, not just 5, 6 different ways. We've had the Buddha illuminating millions of world systems. And then the Buddha shocked the assembly by saying they had more to learn. And 500 of them walked out in disgust. Then he revealed the highest truth, the great way, the Mahayana Bodhisattva ideal. And then many parables have been told, we've heard about some of them, to celebrate and elaborate this teaching. And even at one point, a great big, massive, giant stupa rose up from the ground, containing the miraculously preserved body of an ancient Buddha called Abundant Treasures. So then, the whole world now has been transformed into a jeweled land, ready to welcome 500 visiting Buddhas from their own world systems, along with their attendant bodhisattvas. And they're all now sitting on lion thrones under jewel trees, waiting. So here we are, all that's happened, and everybody's waiting for the Buddha to speak. And the Buddha cries out, "Who among you will preserve the White Lotus Sutra?" And they all vow to keep preaching the sutra forever. And then there is a great trembling, a shaking of the universe, and from the space below the earth rises a great host of irreversible bodhisattvas, an incalculable number of bodhisattvas. And these bodhisattvas greet the Buddha, Shakyamuni, as their teacher, and he greets them as his disciples. And the assembly are not happy. They start muttering. How come so many bodhisattvas? The Buddha's only been enlightened for 45 years. How can he possibly have trained an incalculable number of bodhisattvas? He hasn't had the time. And not only that, but some of these bodhisattvas belong to past ages. Some are really old. Some have come from other world systems. What's going on? They say it's like a young man saying that all these old men are my sons. So they're muttering to themselves and they're saying, we can't believe it. This is impossible. Doesn't make sense. I'm thinking at this point that you were fine with all the massive jeweled trees and world systems and beings of light, but the maths is not adding up, so you're a bit... Anyway, Anyway, the Buddha reveals how he has trained all these bodhisattvas, how that's worked. He says that he was, in fact, enlightened an incalculable number of myriads of millions of ages ago. And not only that, he reveals that he does not really die, he just appears to us to die. So next week, you'll find out from Sangha Gita what that means. You've got a job on to explain that in the talk, The Present Buddha. So you've got that one, Sangha Gita. Quite a job. You can tell the muttering, baffled assembly of us kind of what's been going on. So for now, here we are. The Buddha has said he doesn't really die, he only appears to die. And then he tells this parable. He tells the parable of the good physician. So the parable of the good physician. Once upon a time, there is a good physician, a healer. He's highly skilled in the art of healing. And he has a lot of sons. The sutra says he has 10, 20, or 100 sons. And one day he goes away. He goes to a distant country. And whilst he's away, the sons get into his dispensary and they drink some of his medicine. He's got medicines in there, healing medicines. And the medicine that they drink happens to be poisonous, and they become very, very ill. In fact, they become so ill that they're delirious. They fall on the ground and they're rolling around in delirium. So the father, the physician, returns to this terrible scene of his sons really ill and delirious. They've not all been affected to the same extent. So some are so delirious that they just don't even recognize him. They've completely lost their senses. But some of them still recognize him and they manage to explain what's happened. And he immediately goes out to the fields and the hills and he gathers herbs and remedies and he prepares an antidote medicine really quickly and he gives it to his sons and he explains to them, this will heal them. Take the medicine, this will heal you. So the ones that still have their senses, they take the medicine and they gradually recover. But some of them have lost their senses completely. The poison has got really deep into their system and they're completely raving, they're delirious. So they refuse to take the antidote medicine. They've just lost it. They don't know what's good for them and they just can't take the medicine. They don't want it. So the physician sees this, but he sees that they're still pleased to see him and they're asking for a cure. They want to be cured, but they're completely refusing to take the medicine. So what can he do? It's a really desperate situation. He wants to save his sons, and it's really desperate, so this calls for desperate measures. So he plays a trick on the sons. He says to his sons, he says, look here, I'm really old. My time of death will soon be upon me, and I'm going to go away. I'm going to a distant land, but don't worry, I'm going to leave this good medicine with you, and if you take it, you will be fine, you will be cured, but it's up to you. That's up to you, I'm going. And he goes off and he's leaving them all rolling around on the floor, wailing, really wailing and delirious. And then he sends a messenger back to the sons with a false message, telling his sons that he's died. So the sons at that point are greatly distressed. They're really, really upset. They realize that they think that their father is no longer there, there's nobody to help them, they're all alone, and they're really shocked. But they realize then it's up to them. And it kind of brings them to the senses, and they realize the medicine is good for them, and it's up to them to help themselves. So they take the medicine, and then they are cured, and then the father returns, sees the sons are all safe and well, and they're all really reunited. So that's the parable of the good physician. So what does all this mean? Well, the physician, of course, is the Buddha. And his many sons, that is all of us, that's unenlightened beings. And at the start, the physician goes away And that symbolizes our kind of disconnection, that we're disconnected from the spiritual truth, from our highest self. We're disconnected from our spiritual ideal. And then some of the sons take the medicine and become really ill. So the medicine there is spiritual teaching. And this is trying to get across to us that you can take spiritual practice the wrong way. So you can take spiritual teachings and just use them the wrong way. So we could use spirituality, say, to try to just get what we want and try to be a bit happier and make everything work in life, make life work out, like polishing the wheel. We just want to kind of use it that way. Or even worse, actually, spiritual teachings, if they're really taken the wrong way and practiced the wrong way, they could be harmful. So, like, for example, a Natman, the teaching of no fixed separate self, that could be used to create or heighten a lack of self-worth or a lack of self-love. These things can be taken the wrong way. So the medicine is good, but we have to take it the right way, and we need the Buddha's teaching. We need the Buddha to teach. So then the sons have become delirious, haven't they? And that is symbolizing our negative emotional and mental states, our states of delusion, ignorance and craving, like just rolling around, wailing. We don't know really what we're doing. And then the physician gives the antidote medicine, the Dharma. Some take it and recover their senses quite quickly, but some refuse to take it, don't they? And he plays a trick to get them to take the medicine. So to say something about that, about the Buddha, the physician playing a trick, this is what we would call skillful means. So it's quite a central theme in the White Lotus Sutra. Skillful means is methods and means that help suffering beings, and they're skillful because the effect of that is to alleviate suffering. But it can look a bit like deception, can't it, to us? But in fact, all of the Buddha's Dharma is skillful means. No teaching, no Dharma is the actual truth. Because the Buddha's experience, the truth of how things really are, can't be put into words that way. It can't be explained in concepts and words and teachings. It has to be directly experienced through development of consciousness. So anything the Buddha says conceptually in words about that experience of reality is just a finger pointing at the moon. It's all skillful means. Again, Sangha, a quote by Sangha, the Dharma is the Buddha's enlightenment objectified and therefore falsified. So it is just a symbol, it's not the actual ultimate truth. So the White Lotus Sutra, it uses parables and symbols as pointers. They can be nearer to the truth than concepts. They can actually evoke experience and bring about change. But really, it's worth having a note of caution for us about skillful means. We shouldn't take it upon ourselves to use skillful means, because really it's the preserve of a Buddha, because we can't know the outcome. We're not really in touch with reality as it is. We don't experience that way. So we need to be guided by the precepts. We need to be guided by truthful speech. So in the parable, some of the sons won't take the medicine. They're asking for a cure, but they just won't take it. And we can be like that, can't we? So we do really want to be relieved of suffering, and we want to relieve suffering. We want a solution. We've gone seeking. We've found the Dharma. But on some level, we don't fully believe it to be the solution. Not completely, or we would be practicing wholeheartedly all of the time, without fail. We don't always want the medicine because it can be bitter and it can be difficult to take. So we might just want the nice bits, happiness, joy, and lovely, lovely, lovely Dharma. But we don't really want, not always, we don't always really want to look deeply at suffering and find a cure for it. But it was the death of the physician that jolted the sons into taking the medicine. And the Buddha said it's suffering that motivates us towards liberation. So that's why he taught the Four Noble Truths. He started with dukkha because it really motivates us. Suffering motivates us. I sort of think if everything was sort of fine, if things were fine and fairly much all right, would we walk through the Buddhist center door? Or would we just kind of coast along? Things are just all right, just about good enough. We just keep trying to get everything working as best we can. Just ignoring really old age, sickness and death as long as we can until it's too late. Maybe we would do that if we didn't experience suffering. So there is suffering. We know about there is suffering, and there is a cure. There is a cure for suffering, but we have to be prepared to look at the suffering to find the cure. So we don't always want to. So in the parable, the sons are delirious. They're rolling around on the floor, wailing. So this is us. This is our delusion. This is us in our craving and aversion. No, I want it. No, I don't want it. Like this. I love that image. It really makes sense. So we've got this like really distorted view of reality. We're caught up in craving. We're consumed. We're overcome by it. We've lost our senses. And in the modern West, here and now, in our lives, really, we've got everything we need, generally. In a worldly sense, we could say we've got everything we need. We've got food, we've got safety, shelter, freedom. But we're not happy and we're not fulfilled because it can be really hard, especially when we've got all of that stuff. It can be really hard to find meaning because we've also got an endless opportunity for meaningless distractions, haven't we? And a lot to do and busy lives, etc. So it's like being really quite delirious. It can be really hard to see beyond all our worldly distractions and really find true meaning and connect with anything higher. It can be really quite a tough call. So mostly we're just like rolling around on the floor, wailing, going, help. But we do get messages. We do get the messages, like the messenger in the story that came. We can get messages that bring us to our senses suddenly. We see something. And we all have, that's why we're here. We've all got that. We've all got that. That's why we're in the Buddhist center right now. So in the parable, the physician goes away. So for us, that's just like we're separated from the Buddha. We're separated from connection with this higher meaning, but we do get these messages. We may get a sense of contact with something, a resonance with something higher. So this is Shraddha, sometimes translated as faith or confidence or trust or confidence, Shraddha. And Shraddha, we all have it, and that, like I said, that's why we're here. So it's contact or a sense of our spiritual ideal, our own highest potential, that we've got a sense of that. So this Shraddha, Sangha again says about Shraddha, if we want a definition of Shraddha, we may say that it is the response, even the emotional response, of what is ultimate in us to what is ultimate in the universe. So Shraddha, I've got a list that might be helpful. And this is, this will hopefully give us more of a sense of Shraddha and what it is, because it's got three aspects. So these are not separate or like one thing and then you do the other and then you do the other. They all overlap. So I think of Shraddha as head, heart, and guts. So the head bit is the rational aspect of Shraddha. So that's also called real faith or real Shraddha or understanding Shraddha. So this is confidence and trust in the Dharma. So this is trust in the Buddha's teaching of how things really are. So it's a conviction of what is real. That's why it's called real faith. It's a conviction of what is real, how things really are, the way the Buddha described it. So that's a rational understanding of the Buddha's teachings and principles. And then another aspect of Shraddha is I think of as the heart, which is an emotional response. And this is called lucid faith or serene faith. The name of the type of faith doesn't always seem to quite fit. But this is an emotional response to what has value and meaning. So what we see as having value and meaning, we love that. So it's an emotional response to that. So we love value, we love meaning. We can see this sometimes in ethical action when we see that as beautiful and we love it. So that's the kind of heart aspect. And then the guts is like volitional, like drive. And this is longing faith. So this is longing for what is possible. It's longing for our own potential. It's longing for our ideal. It's a strong desire and an aspiration for liberation. So this is quite a volitional drive. So in the parable, the physician has left. And in our understanding of things, the Buddha has died. And in the sutra, the Buddha explains that by leaving, this develops a longing faith in beings. So we develop a longing faith. We have a longing to see the Buddha. We have a longing to develop. And that is to our benefit. So this longing faith is beneficial for us. It motivates us to make effort towards our own liberation. So the absence of the Buddha creates shraddha, creates longing faith. So we have this sense of longing for connection with the Buddha, for connection to realize our highest potential. We have this longing to become what we can become. So we have this longing and we have motivation that can help us to strive towards our highest spiritual ideal. And also, as well as this longing creating motivation for us, it creates self-sufficiency. So the Buddha's not here. And like the sons, once the father had gone, they realized it was up to them. There was no one there to rescue them. There was no one there to save them. And that's the same for us. So we don't have a God to save us and tell us what to do. We don't have a Buddha here on earth to liberate us and tell us what to do. We've got to realize it's up to us to practice the Dharma. Just as the sons took the medicine, it's up to us to practice, and we need to develop our motivation. So this longing faith and self-sufficiency, it's very positive and it's very motivating. So we do have a longing. We have a longing for what we know to be true in terms of the Buddha's teachings, and what we know and what we sense emotionally to be of value and to have meaning. And it can be fairly quiet. It can just be a kind of like a background nagging sense of there must be more to life. There just must be more to life than this. That's how shraddha can feel. It can be just that quiet sort of background. It can be very strong. And the longing faith can be experienced very strongly, and it can also be misplaced. So I've got a personal example of how I did this. So I had years, when I first met the Dharma, I had a few years of really deep longing. It felt like heartbreak, and it was very strong. I was a bit worried. It's all settled down now, it's fine. I just needed to meditate and do ritual. But I just needed to carry on practicing, actually, and develop some confidence. But it can get misplaced into worldly things, and for me, it definitely did. So I misplaced this spiritual longing for for the Buddha, really, for my highest ideal, this spiritual longing for truth and realization. I misplaced that onto worldly things, in particular onto people. So my background was in physics. So I've got training as a physicist. So when I came to the Dharma, I had a very strong material scientific worldview. Basically, what you see is how it really is, and then you die, and that's that. That was my worldview at that point. But because I was meditating, I'd had some very strong experiences of higher levels of consciousness in meditation, of seeing things as they are beyond the everyday, ordinary appearance of things. And I couldn't doubt those experiences because they were real experiences. But my worldview was very fixed and limited. So what I did is I projected my kind of my experience of the beyond onto the world, onto people in the world. Embarrassingly, I projected onto order members particularly. Could have projected onto worse things, I guess. Order members are fine. But I wanted them to be perfect, you know, I wanted them to be the Buddha, and they were just people. Very, very developed people, but just people. And they were very patient with me at that time until I found a true refuge, you know, until I could find a refuge that's beyond the worldly, beyond ordinary people. I needed a spiritual refuge beyond the material appearance of things, and to develop confidence. Confidence in my connection with the transcendental, which is my name, is a reminder of guided by the beyond. It's a reminder to do that. So we do have this deep spiritual longing for truth, for liberation, and we have to start wherever we are, don't we? So we do long for things. Sometimes we long for things in a more limited and worldly sense. So it can be really helpful to reflect on this. I'm thinking like maybe this could be something for the groups to reflect on how this is for us. So maybe like, what do you long for in an everyday worldly sense, or what do you long for in the higher spiritual sense, and how does that map onto the world for you? So what does this worldly sense of longing point towards in a higher spiritual sense? And what would the next steps be? What practices would help to transform more the worldly into the spiritual ideal? So as an example, in my case, in a worldly sense, I was looking for security. I was looking for someone to save me. And so maybe in a worldly sense, that would be a good example. Maybe some people resonate with that. We long for security, we long for safety. We might tend towards anxiety and worry about that. And in a spiritual sense, what that really is about is not completely understanding the radical interconnectedness of ourselves and others, that whole no fixed separate self. So we don't understand that, we don't realize that, we feel vulnerable, we feel isolated, we feel separate because we think we're separate and we don't understand that we're not. So any practices that connect us to other people, even on a worldly level, will really help to move that towards a more spiritual goal. So the Metta Bhavana practice, gratitude practice, being in the Sangha, all help with that actual worldly sense of interconnectedness. And practices that dissolve that belief in separateness, you know, reflections on impermanence, meditation on impermanence, seeing flow and change, ritual, devotional practices, all those things can really help. So that is the talk, and maybe in the groups, I'll give the group questions, maybe in the groups we could talk about that, talk around that a little bit more. So talk about wholesome longing in a worldly way, maybe talk about the difference between wholesome longing and craving. That's an interesting thing to talk about. And maybe what do you long for in a worldly sense? What is the wholesome longing in a worldly sense, and how does that map onto a more spiritual longing? Or the other way around, you might know what your deep heart wish is, you might know what your spiritual longing is, and then look at how does that play out in your life, in the world, and what practices would help with that. So that's the group questions. Thank you.